In English 110, you were likely writing things that were more applicable to the world outside of academia. But now that we're in English 120, College Composition 2, we need to narrowly focus on academic writing and understanding academic writing structures. When we talk about academic writing, we're often talking about argumentative writing. You're not simply going to write a book report that's informative. Instead, you're going to write argumentative, persuasive essays. You will have a thesis statement, and you will prove how that thesis statement is valid and truthful. In persuasive writing, we say that it has three parts: ethos, logos, and pathos. By using these three parts strategically in your writing, you can ensure that your writing is persuasive for as many people as possible. When we talk about ethos, we're talking about your credibility as the writer. Why should we actually trust you? And are you an expert on this subject? There are a few different ways that we can show that you are a credible writer. First and foremost, write professionally. At the very basic level, all you need to do is proofread your work to ensure that there are as few errors as possible. If there are too many errors, then your reader might think, if they didn't take the time to proofread this, how much time did they actually spend on the argument? Next, we need to check your bias. Are you biased on this topic, and does that show in the writing? If it does show, your reader will pick up on it and say, this writer seems very biased, so I don't know if I trust them. We need to address objections and opposition fairly. If I'm arguing one side of the argument, I need to discuss the other side, and I need to do it in an objective, fair way. I don't need to put them down and say, the other side is stupid or their argument doesn't make sense. I need to look at their argument and fairly represent that argument in my own to discredit their argument. If we're talking about building ethos, here is an email that I got from a student lately. Hey prof, I'm puking RN and I need an extension on the paper that's due today. LMK. So they're saying I'm puking right now. I need an extension on the paper that's due today. Let me know. But if your audience didn't know those acronyms, RN and LMK, then this email sort of falls flat. Instead, just by simply proofreading and writing professionally, we can build ethos such as this revision. Good morning, Professor. I'm not feeling well, and I was hoping to get an extension on today's assignment. If this is possible, please let me know. Thank you for your time. Just with this quick revision and proofreading, now we have a professional sounding email, and as the instructor, I might be more willing to grant this extension because it is a professionally written email. When we talk about logos, this is how you use outside sources to support your argument. Of course, first and foremost, we have to use sources ethically. We can't manipulate sources to make them say what we want them to say so that it supports our argument. We have to use them in an ethical way, and we have to use credible academic sources. If you took English 110 with me, I wasn't too concerned about how credible and academic the sources were that you used. Now, I will pay very close attention. Are you using credible sources? How do we know that they're credible? Are they academic sources? What kind of a source did you use? How recent is the source? And, of course, lastly, we need to cite sources correctly based on whatever citation style you're using, whether that's MLA format, APA format, or Chicago style format. In our writing, we can build logos just by using credible academic sources. If you're looking for web sources, you might look for any website that has .edu, .gov, or .org in the URL. .edu websites come from educational websites like other colleges and universities. .gov sources come from government websites that have a lot of mostly unbiased information and statistics, and .org websites belong to organizational websites, which can sometimes have bias, so we need to be careful of those. Once we get to the negative ones, we're talking about .com sources. .com stands for commercial. This is a site that is trying to sell you something. So they can say whatever they want on their website, whether it's true or not, to make sure that you buy their product. We also want to avoid websites with clear biases, such as PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, or the NRA, National Rifle Association. Both of those have strong political biases, and we want to avoid those biases in your writing. If we're looking for academic sources, we might look for scholarly books or scholarly journals and scholarly journal articles, but one thing that we should avoid is personal blogs. Scholarly books and scholarly journals are often peer-reviewed by other experts in the field. If I write something, I give it to a panel of experts, and they fact-check my work to say, yes, this is all correct and valid, and it makes sense. As opposed to personal blogs, which if I wanted to post anything on my personal blog, I could because it's my personal blog. Finally, we have pathos, your emotional appeals to the reader. So this is where we try and pull on the heartstrings of our readers. But in academic writing, we don't use pathos very often. We often see pathos in advertising because advertisers know that many people shop because of their emotions. If we can play with their emotions, they will be more likely to buy our product. If we see pathos out in the world, we have to think about how we can use information that's going to play with the reader's emotions and bring them to our side of the argument and get them to think the way that we think. For example, if I wanted you to go and adopt a pet, I could give you a bunch of graphs and statistics to say, on average, it takes about $800 a year for you to adopt a cat and care for a cat. This might not be the best kind of information or the best kind of source because it's statistically driven. Instead, we've probably seen advertisements online about pet adoptions where they put a picture of a pet on screen and they say, look at this sad kitty. It's sitting inside of a cardboard box and it will stay inside of a cardboard box living on the streets until you come and adopt it. Come and adopt this cat. Now, readers will be more likely to adopt this cat because we are playing with their emotions. We're using pathos to our advantage. Again, pathos isn't used very often in academic writing. It does have its place out in real-world examples, but in academia, most of the time we're leaning on ethos and logos. As we go further into our week's activities, we're going to examine ethos, logos, and pathos and how it relates to different samples in argumentative writing.